I'm in the middle of a 14-day challenge to compare Android and iOS using a Nexus 6 and an iPhone 6 Plus. To restate what I said in my first video, I've been an Android user for 5 or 6 years and I want to try iOS. If at the end of the 14 days I don't like it, I can return my iPhone 6 Plus to AT&T. If I do like it, I can sell my Nexus 6. I think you'll find this video a little different than some of the other ones you've seen comparing these two phones or operating systems, and that I'm not going to just give a summary of specs, but I'm going to drill into the differences pretty deeply from an everyday user's perspective. I'm a guy who goes to an office job 5 days a week. I have my hobbies, I have my vacations with my family. So I'm going to go over these in a pretty detailed manner. So let's get started. In this video, I'll briefly touch on hardware, then I'll go into a software comparison, and then I'll go into some differences between iOS and Android apps that I've noticed over the past 5 days. And I've been on vacation with my family and really been able to compare these phones and try out a lot of different things with them. So let's get into the hardware. The fingerprint scanner is amazing on the iPhone. That's a hardware spec that I think Apple has done a phenomenal job. I use it obviously to log into the phone, but also for app purchases and also for getting into certain apps, such as my password app, which I use InPass. So it'll ask me for my fingerprint and I can just touch it right there and get right into it. And it's really quick. It's a lot quicker than typing in passwords, and my American Express app uses that, and I think it's something that you're going to see more and more apps use to log in. And again, it's so much quicker, and for me it works pretty well most of the time. If my hands have been wet or something, it may not work right away, but for the most part it works very well. Another thing that I appreciate about the iPhones is the Lightning charger. It really snaps into place better than any Android phone that I've used, and it's multi-directional, so you don't have to try to figure out which direction to put it in. So that's another real plus for the iPhones. Another plus for Android phones is the back button. I know this is more software, but it's also hardware because of the way it works on iOS. But if I did switch to iOS, the back button is something that I would sorely miss. It's something that you really use almost subconsciously when you're using an Android phone. It's just I've so many times just tried to touch a back button right here on the iPhone, and again, it's something you really come to rely on. It's nice too because it changes function. So if you're in an app and you want to minimize the keyboard, you can touch it. If the triangle is pointing down, it means you can minimize the keyboard. And again, that's something that I really miss on iOS. Now, one feature that's nice about the 6 Plus is how you can double tap the home button to bring it down. Now, before I started using the 6 Plus, I thought that it would stay this way until you double tapped it again. But if you're in an app and you want to go back, you hit your back button up here, you can double tap. But once you hit your back button up at the top, the screen size goes back. And so if you're trying to go back multi-levels, for instance, let's go into settings. Now I know on the iPhone 6 Plus you can swipe from the left. I'm already in a setting here, so I can swipe like that. But let's say you're in another app and you're in a few levels and you want to go back and you weren't able, because swiping from the left doesn't always work in some apps on the iPhone. So if you were using kind of one-handed and you wanted to double tap the home button and go back, and you double tap it again and go back, it would be nice actually if it stayed smaller until you double tap the home button again. But that's just kind of a minor thing. But again, I do prefer the back button on the Android phones. Now this is a kind of a gripe about the Nexus 6, but because it's got kind of a beveled back, it does feel really good in the hand, but it rocks back and forth. So if I'm trying to type when the phone's flat, I don't like the way it rocks back and forth. The iPhone 6 Plus is flatter in the back, and it's easier to type when the phone is sitting on a desk. And also, this is on a tablecloth, but if this were on a hardwood desk, it spins really easily, which is kind of annoying. Now I probably could get a different case, maybe one that's more tacky, but I do hardware-wise like the flatter back on the iPhone. One plus of the Nexus 6 is the stereo front-facing speakers, and I really don't know why Apple, with this big bezel around, couldn't put the speakers on the front as they did on the Nexus 6. I think that's something that if you do a lot of gaming and you're holding the phone in your hand, you can cover up this speaker on the side. It's a good speaker, it's just not stereo and it's not front-facing, so that's definitely a plus for the Nexus 6. The home button is something that I prefer now, the home button, if the phone is off. So it's real easy if the phone's laying down or if you just pull it out of your pocket to find that home button rather than trying to find the button on the side. And another thing, speaking of buttons on the side, I don't like how these three buttons are together. You got your power and your volume buttons. I actually like when the buttons are on the other side, because I may be watching a video and trying to turn the volume up or down and hit the power button instead and turn off the phone. So I actually prefer the home button on the iPhone. Now once the phone is already on, I actually prefer the home button on the Android because it's just a light tap rather than having to push down the home button. If I had to pick, I'd probably say I prefer the home button just because of how easy it is to find when the phone is coming out of your pocket, or how easy it is to tap on a desk. As far as screens, the iPhone is a brighter phone screen, and particularly when you're in an app and there's a white background. So let's open up an app here that has a white background, and I actually prefer the screen on the iPhone just because of its brightness. Now the color saturation on the Nexus 6 is better. It's just a deeper saturation, but the iPhone, because of the brightness, I think it looks a little bit clearer. So that's one plus for the iPhone. One last hardware thing I'll mention before I really start to get into the software is the boot up time. If your phone's off, the iPhone 6 Plus boots up in about 30 seconds. I timed it. The Nexus 6, when you turn it on, takes 1 minute and 55 seconds. And now this is an AT&T model, so it's got the AT&T splash screen. I don't know if that delays the startup at all, as if it were on a pure Nexus that you would buy from Google Play. But the Android phone does take longer to boot up. So that's a real quick overview of the plus and minuses for hardware. Now I'm going to get really into the software in these two phones. And I'm just going to kind of go down my list that I have and start with the way the icons are arranged. And this is my biggest gripe with the iOS software, and that is you cannot put apps anywhere you want them, the app icons. So for Android, you've got your app drawer. So let's say I wanted to just grab an app, get the Best Buy app, and I wanted to put it on the screen. I can put it anywhere on the screen. If I want to move it over here, I can move it over here. If I want to move it to another screen, I can. I can actually put more than one of those apps on the screen. So if I wanted to, put, for instance, a Google Play Music folder or icon in a particular folder and then have it on the screen, I can do that. With iOS, you're limited to one app icon, and it's kind of reminiscent to me of those games you used to play, those little slider games where you try to make the picture and you've got the little tiles and you try to arrange them. It's almost like that. When I try to rearrange my icons, it's really frustrating to not be able to put them exactly where I want them. It shifts everything around, which I don't want it to do. And so that to me is probably one of the most frustrating things about going from Android to iOS. I love the app drawer on Android. I love being able to put the icons wherever they want. I would think that in the future Apple is going to change that, because again, it's just a real frustrating experience. And while I'm talking about the app icons, I also appreciate on Android how when you make a folder, the icons kind of come to the front, so they're easier to see on the screen, whereas the icons are much smaller. And I've actually got this in zoom mode, because I feel on the screen that in iOS that if you don't use the zoom mode, it's just kind of small. Everything's a little bit too small for my taste. But the icons in the folder are really hard to see. I'm a visual person, so when I'm looking for a folder, I'm looking more at the icon than the label underneath. With iOS, I found that I'm having to read the label underneath because it's so hard to see the little icons in the folder. Now, I don't have time to go into all the software differences, but just a few. The battery, I really like the way you can tap on the battery icon and get all of your usage data on Android. With iOS, you've got to go into your settings in general and usage and battery usage to get the same information. So that's a plus for Android. Also, you can check your carrier data. Now, I don't have service on the Nexus 6 right now, but if I did, I could tap this icon and it's going to give me my data usage, which is really nice because on AT&T you've got this app that you can check your data, but that takes time, and with Android again, you can just come in and check your carrier data. Another plus to me for the Android software is how quickly you can go into your settings. So if you're in another app and you just want to swipe down twice and go into your settings. I'm really actually surprised Apple did not put this into the control center. I bet you in a few years they will, or maybe even iOS 9 they will. But it's so easy just to swipe down from the top and go into your settings, because I actually go into my settings quite a bit. Now let me talk about the absolute best advantage to Android, and that is notifications. And there's a lot that could be said here, but I'm going to try to summarize this as best I can. Now on Android, you get notification icons at the top. You also get certain functions and apps. For example, I don't know if you can see that on the screen, but I've got the weather channel temperature at the top, so I can always tell what the temperature is. And I can also swipe down, and I've got my the weather channel always has this little notification here. It's permanent, which I set it like that. So notification icons at the top are really nice. It's really easy to look at notifications from the lock screen and get rid of them or open them. And I don't have any notifications right now, but on the lock screen of Android, you have notifications that you can swipe away if you don't want that, or double tap on the new Lollipop software and to open. iOS, you can swipe to get in, and again, I don't have any notifications here, but if I did, I could swipe to get into that, and then it would unlock the phone and use the fingerprint scanner if I have that on. Or you can delete. So if you swipe this way, you open it. If you swipe this way, you can click on the X to delete that notification. Now, one thing I noticed about iOS is once you see a notification and open up the phone, if you were to lock the phone again, that notification is gone. It'll still be up here in the notification center. So I've got a Red Bull TV notification here. So I can either tap on it to open it, or I can delete it. I can swipe this way, and if I wanted to delete each one, I could click on the X, or if I had multiple notifications, I could just click on the X here and clear them all. With Android, even if I turn on the phone and turn it off, if I have not gotten rid of that notification, it's still there. One nice thing in Android about the notifications is how they work when you're using different apps. For example, Google Maps. So right now I'm navigating to New York City, and if I'm in another app or on the home screen, I can swipe down and I can see the navigation right there. On iOS, you cannot do that. Nothing appears here. There's not a widget or anything for that. So I would actually have to either multitask by double clicking and going into that app, or going back to the home screen and clicking on the app. So in Android, you've got the icon that appears at the top to let you know the navigation is running. And by the way, when you're using Google Maps and other things, a lot of times you get this blue blinking bar at the top on iOS, which is kind of a little bit annoying. Now you can click on this and it will go back into the navigation. Now if I'm using something else, for example a mobile hotspot, it'll also tell me on iOS, and sometimes I cannot click to go back into the map. Now a plus for iOS as far as notifications is how you can come to the settings and really customize the notifications for each app. So I'm in settings, I can go to notifications, And like for the phone, I can, allow in the allow notifications. I can show in the notification center, which is up here, the one you swipe down. I can select the sound if I want a badge app icon, or if I want to show it on the lock screen. So you can really customize for every single app in iOS. One thing I really like about Android, and this goes into notifications but also into multitasking as well, and that is the way that certain apps will continue to run. For example, YouTube now has this music feature, so I'm going to play this video, and let's make it bigger. And what I can do is, if I go back to the home screen, this video is still playing. And also, I can see the video up here, so I can actually swipe down from the notification shade to the top, play and pause it, but it's always running, which really is key for using this YouTube function of being able to play music now. And if I try to do that on iOS, if I go back to the home screen or go to another app, it shuts down. So let me just demonstrate what I mean. So I've got this video playing through the music section of YouTube, and if I go back to the home screen, that video will stop playing. I do actually like the control center on iOS, swiping up from the bottom and having access to some things that you would probably get into a lot. For example, the flashlight I use all the time. You got the calculator, you've got the camera, which is easy to access. It's harder in Android to get to the camera. If you're in another app, you have to go back to the home screen to do that. So I do like the notification or the control center in iOS. Now, the problem though is if you are in another app. So this one uses a full screen feature, and sometimes it is really hard to get the control center to come up. So it's got this little arrow that comes up that you can try to grab, and you see I'm trying to do it, and I'm not just fumbling on purpose. Now I got it that time, but there are times when I just can't grab that. The last thing that I'll say about notifications, with Android you can get a lot more information from the lock screen. For example, I'm using Strava and I've started a hike. If I lock the phone on both devices, on iOS I've got nothing on the lock screen. On Android I've got my information about the app that's running, and you see I've also got information about the song that I paused. So this is able to give me some really quick information, and I actually use this a lot. So when I'm hiking with the family, I want to see how far I've gone really quickly. I can just hit the button to power up the screen without actually opening the phone, and I can get my information right there. So another huge plus for Android as far as notifications. A few more software things to mention. The keyboard, I like the Android keyboard because you've got swipe on the keyboard without having to download a third-party keyboard. So if you've never used swipe, it's really it can be really quick. So I can say I like my keyboard. Now with iOS you can download a third-party keyboard, such as the one I have here, SwiftKey, and I can still do swipe, but you lose the voice the voice input. So here I've got my microphone. You'll see there's no microphone on this third-party keyboard. So I have to choose between the stock keyboard that doesn't allow swipe with a microphone, or a third-party keyboard that doesn't have the microphone. Another thing that I don't like about the iOS keyboard is you don't have a period and a comma. So you've got the comma here in Android and the period here, and you use that all the time. So here you have to tap the number, the 1, 2, 3 sign to go to your period and comma, and that gets pretty frustrating. So I'm actually surprised Apple did not include that on the main keyboard because of how frequently it's used. Because I use Google services a lot, I have all my contacts in Google, and I really like the Android stock contacts app, and you've got a lot of information. I'm not going to go into any of my contacts here for privacy issues, but here's one, Bent Creek in North Carolina. And so if it were a person, you would see all kind of text messages that you've sent, things like that. You don't get that on iOS, and so I actually prefer that. And since I'm in the contacts here, Let me talk about material design real quick. I prefer the material design on Android. Everything has a fuller look to it. I really don't like the kind of almost anemic looking buttons on iOS. They've gone from skeuomorphism, almost something to, it's a little bit too anemic with the more stenciled look. Let me talk now about the iTunes Store and the Google Play Store where you purchase content. And this is something that to me is an absolute mess on iOS, and I don't understand why it's so complicated, but you will see what I mean here in a few minutes. If I go to the Google Play Store on Android, everything is nice and organized right here. I've got apps, I've got games, movies, TVs, music, books, and newsstand. Everything right here in one screen. On iOS, I have to go into different locations to get different things. For example, the iTunes Store is where I get my music and my movies and TV shows. If I wanted to get an app, I would go to the App Store. If I wanted to get a book, I would go to iBooks, and I would go to a newsstand if I wanted to get something for news. And so it's really just disjointed to me in iOS. And the thing that's most frustrating to me is looking for something like a magazine. So let me show you first on Android how easy this is. So let's say I want to look for a cycling magazine. So I go to Newsstand and I want to search. I don't want to go through all of the suggested publications. I just want to type in cycling. Okay, I misspelled that. And so I go to search, and it's got all my cycling magazines. Now you'll see I've got Newsstand. If let's say, well, let's see what's available for books. I can change my search to books. And then let's look for apps, and I change my search to apps. So very, very easy to search for things in the Play Store. Now let's do the same thing on iOS. I want to look for the cycling magazine. So here I have to go to Newsstand, and I've got it in my reading folder here. So I go to Newsstand. Now you'll see there's no search, so I have to go to Store. So I click on Store at the bottom. And now I've got some suggested magazines, and I can even go to categories up here and look at my different categories. But I don't want to do that. I want to search for something specific like cycling. So let me cancel back out of here. So now when I go to search, and I go up here to the search bar, let's type in cycling. Now I'm in apps, and I can't find any way to look for magazines. It took me back to the app. And if any of you know if I'm missing something here that uses iOS a lot, please let me know, because I tried for quite a while to get to the function where I could just search for a certain type of magazine or things like that. A nice thing too about Android is being able to go onto your Google Play account on a PC and look for an app and download it, and it will actually send it out to your phone. I've noticed that voice to text, so when you're wanting to type something by just speaking it, does not work on iOS if you don't have an internet connection or cell service. And on Android, you can actually talk and move it to text even if you don't have any kind of connection. So if you're in airplane mode, you can still do voice to text on Android. One feature that I use a lot is looking at PDFs and saving them. In iOS, it's very easy to save PDFs to iBooks, and I've got a PDF pulled up. This is a user manual for my BlueBuds X earphones. So I can click on iOS Open In, and I can open this in iBooks. I can open it in Playbooks, and it will actually save it there. And it's very easy to access that for future use. On Android, when you click on the PDF, it'll actually download it, and then you click on the download, and then you can come over here and you can either save it to Drive, which I do a lot of times, And I've learned in Android that you can actually upload to playbooks, and I actually learned that by using the iPhone. And to do that in Android, you have to open up the Playbooks app and allow PDFs, and then you can upload those to the Playbook. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to click on Upload to Playbooks and click on Got It. Now it's uploading it, and I've got my PDFs here in Playbooks as well. So I would say it's about the same as far as the experience of saving PDFs. It's just a little bit different way of going about it. Sharing photos is pretty easy on both phones. With iOS, you would actually do it through AirDrop, which I think is pretty cool. So you would click on Share, and you could AirDrop it with people that are nearby. So you've got to have a proximity where Bluetooth will reach, and it uses Wi-Fi, and I think you can still do it even though you're not on a Wi-Fi network, and I can't really confirm that totally, but if any of you guys want to leave a comment, if you can actually share photos with AirDrop without being on a Wi-Fi network together, I think you can. But you know, I was on vacation with a few people this past week, a few family members, and everybody had an iPhone, and it was really easy to pull them up in AirDrop, and you've got to set it in your control center. And so you can change it to contacts or everyone or off as far as AirDrop, but it works really well, and that's a really plus for iOS. With Android, you know, it's still easy. It uses NFC, so you would actually touch the back of the phone. So if this was an Android phone, I would touch, it would use NFC. I would get a notification on the phone where the phone's going to, asking if you want the photo, and you'd say yes. So it does work, and it actually may work a tad faster if you don't have AirDrop set up, but once it's set up, it's very easy to use, and especially since a lot of people have iPhones, and it's really easy to share. Now, I have given a lot of pluses to Android so far, and let me talk about the absolute most amazing thing about iOS and iPhones that has me seriously considering keeping this phone, and that is the camera. I wish that Android could put out a stock Android phone like the Nexus with a camera as good as the iPhone. Now the Nexus camera is a good camera, but the iPhone camera is just head and shoulders above it, and I'm not going to do a lot of comparison between photos in this video. I'm going to make a separate one that shows a whole bunch of different photos that I took with both phones, and especially low light performance. The iPhone just blows away the Android. When there's bright light, there's a little bit more detail. I think color's a little bit more accurate with the iPhone, but I've had probably the best experience over the past 5 days using this iPhone on vacation, taking all kinds of different photos, and almost every photo that I took turned out really well. The optical image stabilization when you're using video is amazing. And so, you know, really kudos to Apple for making a phone with such a phenomenal camera. I like quality. I love quality music. I love quality photos. And, you know, the photos here are as good as any, you know, good quality point and shoot that I've ever used. You know, some of the photos look as good as they do on my DSLRs. It is absolutely amazing how good the camera is on this phone. And not only is the quality good, but just the speed of taking a photo. So, you know, if I were to just pick up this phone and just open up the camera app, push the shutter button, it immediately takes a photo. Sometimes there's a little bit of delay for focus on my Nexus 6. So let me do the same thing, and I'll just open up and take a photo here. It's actually focusing now, and wow, the camera app crashed. So let me close this out. Actually, it doesn't happen very often, but here, that's a great case in point. So I got it open. That took it pretty quick because the focus was already there, but the speed is great. Also, the burst mode is great. I mean, you can hold down this button and just take a burst of photos, and let me unmute it so you can actually hear it. So I mean, it just took 8 photos like that. The slow-mo video is incredible. Autofocus on video is super quick. So everything about this camera, it doesn't have a ton of settings, I know that, but the quality and speed of this camera is just absolutely amazing. And if you're from Google and you're watching this, I'm on my knees begging for you to make a Nexus or any kind of phone with stock pure Android that has a camera as good as the iPhone. Because again, it's really making me consider keeping this, because I use the camera a ton. I took tons of video, tons of photo on my vacation last week, and almost every single photo turned out great. So that's all the praise I'll give for the camera. I could go on, but again, if you're watching this video and you want to see some comparisons, stay tuned to my channel. I'll post one up in the next week or two. And I also compared some photos taken with my Sony a6000, which is a really high-end mirrorless camera. And so you'll see that in that video. So that will conclude my iOS versus Android from a hardware and software perspective. And since this video is getting rather long, I'm going to end it here and do the app comparison in a separate video. So find that on my channel, and I'll go over the way the iOS and Android apps compare to each other.